Welcome everybody, I'm Yogi, this is Yogi's Trail, and this is video number 3 in my intro to backpacking series. Today we are going to be talking about shelters. I have 5 different shelters to show everybody today, and this will just be kind of like a quick overview of different types and styles of shelters. We won't be getting like too crazy in depth on these. So to start things off, we are going to have a freestanding doubled wall shelter. This is going to be an REI Quarter Dome 2, and by freestanding I mean that this network of poles that the tent comes with is going to be enough to erect the body of the tent and keep it, standing and form the body of the actual tent. You don't have to guy it out. It doesn't require guy outlines or stakes to be erect. Now you do want to stake this shelter out, and all these kind of semi-freestanding freestanding shelters, you do want to stake them out for sure, but you don't have to keep this one erect. That's what freestanding means. It is a double wall shelter, but I only have one of the walls up right now. The other wall that's missing is going to be the rain fly, and I really just didn't want to put those on. 1, because I'm getting a little tight on space. 2, because I just kind of want to show you the body of the tent and what the structure looks like, what makes it freestanding, yada yada yada. But don't think that these tents, or that you shouldn't bring a rain fly out, because they are part of this this tent system. Now this one being freestanding and double walled, the pros of it are it's going to be easy to set up. Usually, they're mostly easy to set up, but I've had my times in the wilderness where it has not been easy. So usually they're pretty easy to set up. That's definitely a pro of them. You can get them readily available, like REI, any kind of big box store. They can be pretty expensive, or you can shop the deals and wait for sales and get good prices on them too. So kind of keep that in mind. They are a bit pricey, but they kind of don't have to be. Another kind of pro for these are they're going to have less condensation. And when I say less condensation, like if you sleep in a condensation prone area, you're going to wake up and your tent's going to have condensation all over it. There's not much you can do. But since it has these 2 walls to it, your water vapor and your breath gets to go through this mesh little wall here, and then it kind of piles up on the rain fly on the outside. So it does mitigate condensation better than another style of tent that I'm going to show you here soon. Some cons of this tent: since it has all these poles that make it easy to set up, it's definitely going to be heavier. Still, 3.5 pounds for this shelter. That's not getting too crazy. It's a very nice shelter. It's roomy, and yeah, I've had a lot of good times in this shelter. And these are great for kind of when you're starting out, just because they're easier to set up. They don't have you rigging guy lines and doing all these stakeout points and stuff. So when you get to camp, you don't really have to stress. You can just kind of set this up and be ready to go with it. On this side here, we're going to have another double walled tent without the double wall. And this one here is going to be a semi-freestanding shelter. So what I mean by semi-freestanding is if you set it up with just this pole here, it's going to fall over. You have to stake out the back points on this shelter for it to actually get tension and stay erect. So other than that, the really big differences between this tent and this tent: this one's going to be lighter. It's a little tinier, but honestly, I love this tent. I've felt claustrophobic in it, and I'm kind of claustrophobic myself, so don't get me wrong, it's tiny, but it's not like you're in a coffin or anything. And of course, something to consider with these shelters is what are you going to put below your shelter to protect it. Now, some shelters, like a Cuban fiber or Dyneema shelter, they don't really need ground sheet with them. But when you're talking about silicone nylon or sil poly, you want to put something underneath it to protect the shelter. Now, you can go with your classic footprint that the manufacturer does not give you but will sell you with the tent. They're a lot of money, they're $50, and this is 5 ounces. Now I can go get a piece of Tyvek off of Amazon. I can cut it to size. I can make little shot cord attachments, and I can make a footprint that's going to work with the shelter. And this is going to weigh 5 ounces right here as well. And I think this cost me 10 or 12 bucks. So if you're going to, have a 5 ounce footprint, you might as well just buy a piece of Tyvek. You don't even have to make the shot cord things. I just do that. But throw it underneath your shelter, and that'll be good enough to protect your shelter. And you can also use this on breaks throughout the day or to cowboy camp. If you want to go super lightweight, piece of polycro right here. This one in particular weighs like 1.6 ounces. So this will cover the bottom of a tent, and it is actually really durable. This is just the stuff that they sell at like Home Depot in the wintertime when you need to put them around your windows and seal it up and seal the heat in your house. That's what this is. So you can go to Home Depot, you can buy a bunch of this, you can order it off Amazon, and you can have yourself a really lightweight and inexpensive footprint. And that's what I use for all of my shelters. I can use Tyvek too if I want to, but yeah, I think I bought this footprint, used it on the Colorado Trail, said nope, too heavy, made one out of polycro, never went back. You'll need a stake bag to put your stakes in. You don't want your really pointy stakes puncturing your shelter and messing it up, do you? So do yourself a favor, you can spend 10 bucks on like Z-Packs and get a Dyneema stake bag, or use just something durable to put your stakes in. This right here is just a big piece of polycro. As you can see, super light, but it's actually super durable as well too, so I just kind of wanted to lay that out there and show it to you as well. This is shelter number 3 for our video. This is going to be a single-walled, non-freestanding shelter. Now, when I say non-freestanding, this does not have a network of poles that keeps it standing up. This trekking pole and this main guy line here and the other stakeout points on the tent are actually going to keep this thing erect. That being said, the single wall feature of it, it's just going to have one wall between you and the outside world. It's not going to have a mesh inner, it's not going to have a rainfly outer, it's just going to have one piece of fabric between you and the outside world. Now, having no poles, having only one piece of fabric in between you and the world, that's going to make this a way lighter structure. This tent here weighs 30.5 ounces, and that's including everything. That's including your lines, your stakes, the tent body. It does not include the trekking pole. But the idea with this shelter is you have the trekking pole on you already, you're using it all day, and now you have it to be part of your shelter at night. So instead of having a set of tent poles in your shelter, you have your trekking poles and you have your shelter. And you're using your trekking poles now for 2 things rather than 1. These shelters are amazing. Not only is it lightweight, not only is it easy to set up once you get the learning curve done. This is going to have a learning curve to it, but I tell you what, you get the tent, you spend an hour with it outside, sending it up and down, you watch a few YouTubes. I'll even link a good YouTube setup on this in the comments below. You'll have it down. I don't even have it down 100%, but I can set it up good enough to sleep in. So I don't know, I guess you just keep learning as you go, and you're never perfect in backpacking. Let's just face it, you never get to that perfect setup. But this is pretty damn close to perfect. With the pros, there are some cons, of course, just like with everything. This single wall is going to accumulate condensation a lot more. It's not going to have that mesh layer for your air vapor to go through and then your rain fly to trap it. It's just going to have this single layer. So your water vapor goes bam, right up on it, and it stays there. So it's not a big deal. What you do is just get up in the morning, you get like a chamois or your handkerchief, and you just give the walls a quick wipe, and that's it. And kind of when you wake up, you make sure not to like flail around and hit your head against the wall or do that so all the water comes down on you. You just kind of get up, wipe off your condensation, and it's a small price to pay for having a lighter weight structure. Now, the other cons to this are going to be, I don't know if this is really a con, but you have to seam seal a lot of these shelters from the cottage companies. Now, unless you're getting something that's like Cuban fiber and taped, most of these sil poly or sil nylon shelters are going to have you seam seal them. So seam sealing isn't that expensive. You can make it yourself. You can go buy it at the store for it's like $5 or $10 or something. It takes a half hour at the most. I was going through this thing with a fine-tooth comb, so it took me I think 45 minutes. But I don't know, it was a pleasure to do. It got me setting up the shelter and playing with it, so I don't know if you want to really say that's a con, but keep that in mind. You do have to seam seal these when you get them. Now, one of the pros that I really love about these shelters is you can really have the world just open up to see you. I have this wall open right now, and if I wanted to, I can take this one here, and I can fasten that other wall back, and bam, now I have a shelter that I can see the whole world in. I don't have anything in my way for me in the outside world. And when I'm out backpacking, I just love that aspect of these shelters, is that when I'm in my shelter, I don't have to be like, in my shelter and like cut off from the world. I can be inside here. I can have my bug net up. I can be away from the bugs. And I can see outside. I can see the sun shining through the trees. I can watch birds. I can say hey to other hikers walking by. But that's one of the things I really love about this shelter. Now, if you got to button down the hatches, bam! Hatches are buttoned down. You now have a vestibule to store your gear in. You now have protection from the elements. And this thing's kind of cool with these single wall non-freestanding shelters. You can adjust the height of your trekking pole, and I can pitch this a little bit lower. So this can go pretty, I can get this kind of down here. I don't really like to do that because my tent body floor kind of suffers, my tent floor suffers, but you can do that. You can adjust the height of these, so if it's really nice, you can make it nice and airy and breezy. If it's super stormy out, you can pitch it lower and get it nice and low to the ground. Shelter number 4 in our series today. This is a tarp shelter. Specifically, this is a poncho tarp that I have. I don't have a big backpacking tarp because I usually go in the summer and I can't stand mosquitoes when I'm in my shelter. So I don't really own a big backpacking style tarp. This is all I have to show you, but generally it's going to be the same thing as all the other tarps. You're going to have a single wall to it. You're going to have non-freestanding design, so you have to have some sort of pole, some sort of guy line to make this thing stand up and form a nice rigid structure. But a lot of the same pros and cons are going to go with this as any single walled shelter. You're going to have a little more condensation, but also since you're so open to the world and so much air is flowing through a tarp, that's going to definitely mitigate condensation. I would say a lot. I don't really think there's a lot of condensation issues with just tarps, depending on where you're set up, of course, and how the tarp is set up. That all goes into it for sure. But tarps are going to have a little less condensation usually than a netted shelter would. Now with this being so simple, it's also going to have a steeper learning curve to it. Now setting this up, as you can see, you got guy lines here. I got a guy line back there staked up to a trekking pole. There's a lot going on with tarps, and unless you're pretty seasoned with them, I wouldn't rely on it as your main shelter out there. I would definitely practice with it, become proficient with it, and or go out and make a bunch of mistakes. I'm still going out and making mistakes, and that's the beauty of backpacking. You're always learning. But these are going to be very light. Without that tent body, without the net, this whole thing with the lines, with the stakes and everything comes out to 10.7 ounces. Now keep in mind, it's going to be smaller because it's my emergency shelter when I'm day hiking, but you can get tarp systems that weigh less than a pound, and you can have a ton of room for 2 people, maybe 3 people even. And that's, with sil poly or sil nylon material as well. You don't have to go buy Dyneema or Cuban fiber to get a lightweight setup with this. You can go spend $100 and get a shelter that's going to weigh under a pound or around a pound. So that's one really cool thing about tarps. Now if you live or you go backpacking in a time when there's not a lot of bugs, like if you're in the desert, if it's spring or fall up in the mountains, and you don't have to worry about bugs, that's my reason of not using a tarp most of the time, is I just hate bugs. I can't stand doing a big, huge day of hiking and having to deal with bugs. But other than that, they're great. They provide a great immersive experience in the outdoors. You can see everything kind of around you. They provide really fun setups. You can use elements around you, like a log or a rock as like a wall for one side, and you can really get down and have a lot of fun with tarps. So I definitely recommend having one. Just in case, even for car camping, to cover stuff with. And then if you want to play with it one day and use it as a shelter, then you have it. You can go to Walmart and spend $10-15 and get a nice little tarp to play with. And when I first started hammocking, I used a Walmart just tarp for my system, and it worked just fine. And on that note, let's go talk about hammocks. All right, everybody, this is going to be our final shelter for the video, a hammock system. This is my personal favorite for backcountry travel. I love a lot of things about it. I dislike some things about them too, but I don't want to go like crazy into hammocks or anything here. I just wanted to kind of show you the shelter style setup. So, the hammock in itself is pretty simple. It's just couple ends that connect with some cordage to a tree, and a tarp. Now, some stuff I do want to talk about with hammocks are, a lot of people think that I've talked to that you lay in a hammock that your back is going to be curved like a banana. And that's just not the case. When you're in a hammock, you actually have your head at one end and your feet are going to be at the other, and that creates this diagonal lay, and the hammocks are designed to kind of keep you flat when you're in that diagonal lay. Now, your feet are going to be propped up a little bit, your head is kind of naturally propped up a little bit. I like it, but at first I used just a E&O hammock and like a blue tarp from Walmart to hammock in. I used that for a couple times. I used a pad to put in my hammock. And then I kind of knew, okay, I really like hammocking. I'm going to invest in some kind of cooler hammock stuff that's more specialized and made for hammocking. And that's the other point I want to hit, is if you've gotten like an E&O hammock, or you've gotten a hammock, for 20 bucks at a garage sale or something, and you know that you kind of lie in it a little bit on the side and you're not like a banana, those hammocks are still not going to be like specially made for backpacking. When you get a hammock that is specially made for backpacking, it's going to make all the difference. It's going to be made just for what you're doing out there. So please keep that in mind, is if you have tried hammocking, it is going to be definitely a big learning curve. You're going to have the setup you're going to have to learn. You're going to have to learn the type of hammock that's good for you. You're going to have to learn how to use tarps and rig tarps. You're also going to have your body's going to have a curve in a hammock too. Now, I've heard this from other people too, so it's not just really subjective, but it took me about, 4 or 5 times sleeping in a hammock to really love the hammock. Now, I liked it when I first started it. I was like, this is nice. It's a little weird sleeping in. I would kind of, sleep a little awkwardly in it. But there was one night where I think it was my 4th or 5th time in a hammock. I slept in it and it clicked. And I loved it. I woke up without any shoulder pain. I woke up without any back pain. And for me, I'm getting a little bit up there in age. I need something that's going to be a little bit more friendly on my body. So a hammock does that for me. Maybe it can do it for you too. But just do realize that the pros of it are going to be super, super comfortable, once you get in it and once you kind of go over the sleeping curve and your body kind of adapts to it. And you do get a chair and you get a bed in one. So if I want to take this and get my bug netting off here real quick, I just do this, do a little bit of that, take that, put it like this, and now I've got a chair. And I can sit and I can chill out in this chair. I can actually set this up so I can lounge in it and have like a lounge chair. I have the hammock set up in what's called porch mode right now, so my tarp is actually being held up by 2 trekking poles, and they're guyed out with a couple guy lines. So you can sit here and you can watch a rainstorm. You can sit here and eat your breakfast in the morning, with your quilt on you. That's one of the things I really love about hammocks, is just the versatility with them, and they're just so much fun. Now with that, like I said, there's a steep learning curve to them, not only with setting them up, but buying them, figuring out what's out there, figuring out what stuff you want to use to set up your hammock from the tree to the actual hammock body, figuring what kind of tarp you want to get. There's a lot involved with it, I'm not going to lie, but I will point you in the direction of this gentleman, Shug. Shug is a dude that loves hammocks. He's all about them, and he has like the best in-depth tutorials for hammocking. So I'm going to link some of his videos down in the comments. If you're into hammocks, or you want to get into hammocks, or you're curious about hammocks, go check him out. He will teach you everything there is to know about hammocks and then some. I'm still a novice at hammocks, so I'm going to leave the professional explanation up to him. But I just wanted to show you this type of shelter, and it is going to be kind of finishing things off heavier. But it's like a 3-pound system. But do consider you have a whole hammock body. Maybe if you bring a chair with you, now you don't have to bring a chair, so you're saving a pound or even more on your chair. And you also have a tarp to kind of put up if a storm comes in, or if you want to take a break and you need some shelter, you can throw up your tarp pretty quick. You can set this tarp up when you get into camp in the rain and have all your stuff under here and set up your shelter in really good dry conditions. And something else that is really cool with hammocks is you can sleep where a lot of other people can't sleep. If there's a bunch of rocks under your space or something, like, you can set up your hammock and you don't have to deal with having a flat ground or a ground without rocks on it. So that's a big plus for hammocking in my mind, is you can pretty much camp wherever there are trees. Of course, those trees have to have that kind of perfect space in between them, but nonetheless, your availability to campsites opens up so much more. I just love hammocks. I think you can tell. I'm going to go ahead and shut up about hammocks now. And yeah, this is my intro to backpacking shelters video. If you got anything you want to talk about in depth even more, if you want to talk gear anyways, or just say hey in the comments, please do. I look forward to answering any questions and having any discussions and learning more about any of these shelters that you saw and what your thoughts on them. So that's it for Yogi. I'll see y'all later.